Welcome to another edition of the Gruber Morning Show sponsored by the Gruber Companies. Should Mr. Bean remain in entertainment?
It's been 2 weeks. Is FSD version 12 being released?
And Swedish unions battle Tesla.
Giga casting might move in-house for Tesla.
I'm Pete Gruber.
And I'm Mark Schaffner.
These and other stories on the Gruber Morning Show.
Good morning.
So first item, this thing with Sweden, kind of interesting. A lot of discussion, a lot of rapid changes, but apparently Tesla has filed a lawsuit against the Swedish Transport Agency and the state-owned postal service, PostNord. The automaker seeks to collect registration plates directly for its new vehicles, and they had blocked those apparently, in order to pressure them into adopting some collective bargaining in Sweden. The dispute arises from a broader conflict with the Swedish unions, particularly IF Metal, IFF or IFMETALL, which is demanding that Tesla sign a collective bargaining agreement for its service employees. They have 7 service centers in the country of Sweden. So this conflict has led to strikes, blockades, and sympathy across from various sectors, impacting Tesla's operations in this country. Turns out that only 10% of the Tesla employees were reacting to this. The 90% were actually coming to work every day, and Tesla was beginning to replace some of the people that weren't showing up for work. But this thing with the plates was a punitive action apparently taken to effectively make it impossible for new owners to register their cars. And in response, Tesla filed a lawsuit demanding that the Swedish Transport Agency cooperate. They said that it constitutes an unlawful and unique attack on its operations in Sweden. And Tesla further claims that a constitutional obligation for the agency to provide license plates directly to the vehicle owners. I think Elon summed it up a bit less eloquently. Being a man of few words, he called the situation insane.
Yeah, I was really intrigued by this because I know that Sweden is going to be, different government, different being over in Europe, and they had a stronger labor sector in their government, but I wasn't sure exactly how strong. I've learned that the labor they kind of run things over there.
Yes,
it's in the part of Sweden's constitution, the right to strike. And when I saw that was there, I'm like, wow, these labor unions have a lot of power in this country.
And they actually finance some of the government.
That's just incredible. Yet at the same time, this has got to be some sort of a murky area because this isn't labor striking in order to get better benefits. This is organized labor trying to strike and shut down Tesla so that they can have the right to have a vote to unionize. Mm-hmm. They're not even in as part of Tesla yet, and Tesla's fighting that.
And they probably haven't been paying attention very well to see what Tesla's stance is on unions, period.
Yeah, they probably haven't been. So it's the idea that they're just simply trying to establish this and that they have control over the post office to be able to hold mail deliveries, not only to Tesla itself, but to all Tesla owners. That smacks of a problem with me. So I'm not surprised that the Swedish courts came back and ruled in favor of Tesla on at least getting their mail delivered.
And one of the panelists on Farzad Misbahi's podcast yesterday was actually an attorney, and he said, this is remarkable. He says, I've never seen a judgment handed down in one day in the legal world.
Wow.
But so as of yesterday, a Swedish court has already sided with Tesla. The transport agency now has 7 days to comply and provide license plates to Tesla, or they will face a fine of 1 million kroner. Now, before you get too excited, 1 million kroner is 128,000 or 93,000 US dollars.
Yeah, so while it might be more of a slap of the wrist, it does set a legal precedent that the unions in Sweden seem to have overreached themselves in trying to force Tesla to unionize.
And some other punitive action, by the way, by yet another unionized function within Sweden was PostNord, which is which is their postal system. So it wasn't limited to just the transport agency. It turns out that the mail system was being held up for anything going to Tesla, and again, it was an unlawful attack, as it was phrased, and it looks like the courts are beginning to side with Tesla on this. Now, the real question here for me is, all right, we've gone through this now, and it looks like Tesla is prevailing at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody think that Tesla will ever consider Sweden for a manufacturing facility after all of this skirmish?
Oh, I don't think they will at all. They'll see the power that the unions have. If Tesla did not realize before, I'm sure they realize now that, with the exception of the fact that this union is trying to do this so that they can become unionized rather than as an actually established union. It's legal and is enshrined in the Swedish constitution that unions can call on other unions from other industries for sympathy strikes, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's completely legal.
Very powerful, it sounds like.
It does sound like it's very labor friendly, very powerful. I would think it's more likely that the Swedes lose one or more of their service centers, even though the Model Y is the best-selling car in Sweden, regardless of type, than it is that Tesla would build a factory.
And of course, the recourse to any Swedish Tesla owners might just be in the future independent service organizations that are willing to cave into some of these demands.
Yeah, it's definitely quite a cultural thing. We have a few things already coming up on our questions. First, on Instagram, YBSA66 says hi.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Callum Smithy also asks, can we get Andrew Tate on for an interview?
What do you think, guys? They can work on it.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Okay. Tell us more.
I've seen some of his rants about EVs and not liking EVs, and a lot of it's all the old
outdated info.
Yeah, all outdated information,
Yeah.
nothing updated, and then they just dwell on it and then they make stuff up as
Really?
they go. It's just not
Well,
interested.
You know, staying with that thought for a moment, stay tuned because we're going to talk about Mr. Bean later on and whether he should remain in entertainment or become an EV or weigh in on the
most definitely.
EV adoption. Instagram, James Schroeder 15, Union Strong, says he. Instagram, James Schroeder 15 again says Tesla will unionize. Interesting.
It's an interesting take. Here in the States, what I have been hearing as I read through the news on this is that Tesla is they're definitely taking action to raise wages, to help make sure that their benefits to their employees are equivalent to the new benefits that Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler got. And again, you have to know it's a press filter, so you're only going to hear certain things. But the other thing is that it seems that the changes in wage increases have been taken quite positively by the people at Tesla, and the workers so far seem to be very anti-union.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Nolver53 from YouTube. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Welcome back.
Always good to see you. So, next news item, Tesla Giga casting supplier, Tooling and Equipment International, or TEI, has been reportedly bought by General Motors in a move that legacy automakers hope will help it catch up to the leader in EVs, which of course is Tesla. Now, GM has reportedly bought TEI after the company helped Tesla pioneer Giga casting, the new EV maker's manufacturing strategy, to streamline automotive production in its factories and ramp production significantly over the past few years. You had mentioned that there's a unique process that they're following, unlike IDRA in Italy, which is the first one that Tesla actually aligned with for some of the Giga casting
Right. You've done casting yourself in the past, where you basically build a sand mold where the seams are at. You put in wax to make sure that it doesn't, that you don't end up with leaks in your, leaky seams. You pack in the sand and.
Actually, I can give you a precise description.
Okay.
I was one of the fortunate high schoolers that had a high school available in Rochester, New York called Edison Technical, which was a trade school. And you got both your academic classes in the morning and then your trade classes in the afternoon. In your ninth grade, you actually went through about a dozen or so different trades, which then allowed you to select the one that you preferred.
Sure.
Foundry was one of those. And I remember we made a scraper. And we started with pieces of wood where we cut them to shape and precise dimensions, and then used wax to fill in the cracks, kind of like caulk.
Right. Okay.
That then was put into a sand mold and compressed, which then became the negative space for the mold where the molten aluminum was poured.
Right. And now that basic concept is how castings work for things like engine blocks or other large automotive parts, even for the Giga press. The new thing that could be as revolutionary as the Giga press itself is that Tesla has figured out, working with this supplier and others, how to 3D print their sand casting.
The mold.
Yeah, that's a sand mold that the cast aluminum will be poured into. That's pretty fascinating, because the main advantage is, instead of having to spend a whole bunch of time building a sand mold only to if you find a mistake in it, or if you want to make a change, have to retool all of the tools that are used to build the sand mold. If they want to make a quick change to how the sand mold works, you simply change the program in a 3D printer and boom, you have a new sand mold.
You have speed and accuracy now.
Yes.
The amount of time that it took us to make that little wooden mold was pretty substantial. The actual pouring of the casting was quick, but yeah, if you can eliminate that step, 3D printing seems to be a flawless candidate for that kind of a process.
It certainly does. So that's pretty exciting to me. Now, the fact is, though, GM now owns TEI.
Right.
It was only about $100 million that they paid for the company, too. So this is not a really large company.
Right.
I'm just, to me, my impression is Tesla will probably just either bring the molding in-house or move to some of the other suppliers that they have for some of these castings.
Sure, and you would think that a company like TEI would be interested in continuing to service their customer base. So again, why wouldn't they be able to handle both GM's business and Tesla's business, unless GM, who now owns them, is attempting to in some way cripple Tesla? Which is possible. That may be part of their strategy.
It's possible. I mean, it's also possible that GM is trying to play the role that Russia played in the 1940s when they went and stole the nuclear secrets. If you can't figure out what your competition's doing, you simply buy off the suppliers to that competition. In the 40s, it was the nuclear scientists. And then you gain all this knowledge very, very quickly without having to take the time to research it.
Right. Which we're going to talk about, by the way, in the next podcast, which is the Tesla Roadster podcast at 11 o'clock. We're going to talk about the Chinese Roadsters a bit and the desire for the Chinese company that bought those 3 Roadsters to reverse engineer, to do exactly what you just described.
Yes, exactly.
Rather than develop their own engineering talent and their own technology.
Exactly. More comments that we have. Niels on YouTube is with us. He says, when it comes to the unions, I think you're forgetting the supportive roles that Scandinavian unions have. They educate and they cooperate. There are so many other factors for Tesla to consider than unions.
Interesting take, Niels, because Niels is from Denmark, part of Scandinavia, although I believe Denmark does not have the same level or depth of unions that Sweden does. But being from that part of the world, we respect your opinion.
We absolutely do. We're admittedly a little bit ignorant on how the unions work over in Sweden, because our perspective is just a U.S. perspective, and labor is very contentious over here.
Very. And one might even argue that the labor unions are no longer necessary and they get in the way and they're adversarial. And what Tesla's doing here makes perfect sense. Pay them more than the unions. Take better care of your employees. Have HR departments. And you don't need the unions. They're parasitic in many ways.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing the other perspectives that we get from people who are in Europe and encourage you to describe to us, tell us how it is and how you see it.
Instagram, eSchneider_V7, Cybertruck Thursday, let's go. Absolutely. And then from Germany, we've got FNE_mobile saying greetings from Germany. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And then Herbert Buder, he's from Düsseldorf, also Germany. He says unions in Sweden are a positive contributor to the company's development, safety, environment, etc. Not comparable to unions in the United States. Maybe, he says.
Herbert, thank you for that perspective. I really want to learn more about how the Swedish unions and government and business all interact with one another, because I do get the sense that it's very, very different than it is from over here.
One thing, guys, that I'm reading over some of my research here is that Sweden has very little regulation on business. So it's really a capitalist dream actually to do business there, but because they don't even have things for their workers, basic protections like minimum wage or anything like that. So I think that the unions play a much more important role there. It is different. Maybe we can do a segment on that for next week. We'll do some research.
That's an excellent idea. Do an expanded video on that. YouTube Exploration says the Roadster is now all open source. Wow, you guys must be thrilled. We are. The next session is going to deal with the impact and how this was all staged. It'll be an interesting session at 11 o'clock.
I'm looking forward to that session a lot. On TikTok, the MYUZ says, hello, how are you? We are well, thank you. And then on YouTube, again, Niels is back and says, right. He says, the skill of a Swedish worker is often about the same as an American engineer. But then there's transport, capital costs, support of suppliers, so on and so forth.
Etc. Yes. YouTube, Nalver53 says, unions make it harder to fire lazy people. Okay.
That is...
that's a downside.
That's a downside of unions. Definitely is true in the United States. I see it in education. My wife's a teacher. And when a teacher ends up getting to a tenured status in... that's not something that happens as much here in Arizona, but we have a niece in New York that's a teacher and is now tenured, and tenured teachers are basically impossible to fire.
Yeah. Germany has some of those labor laws as well. My brother always complains about, he was a manager in a company, and there were people he would like to have terminated but couldn't.
Right.
So here's this the deal about this Tesla and TEI and the fact that GM now owns the company, the vendor that they were relying on for some of these castings. It says in this article from Teslarati, now Tesla is scrambling to find a new sand casting specialist. And it will lean on other casting companies in Britain, Germany, and Japan who will develop the molds that it will need to build millions of $25,000 EVs, which has been talked about a lot recently, and would also be built in Germany. So finding the sand casting capability in Germany probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
They are also considering, Tesla, they say, is also considering an in-house role to cut its reliance on outside companies, which it has previously done in cost-cutting strategies, which is a common practice in business when it's too painful to find contractors or vendors. You develop the capability in-house. That's exactly the reason we got into the communications business years ago. The vendor flaked on us, and we needed the product, and we decided let's do it ourselves. And today it created a whole division.
And when we, in Gruber Power Services, started to grow to other states, as we got to a certain critical mass of business in those other states, we found that it was cheaper, in many cases far cheaper, for us to go ahead and hire somebody in-house, place them in that state, such as California, Nevada, or Texas, and let them do the work that we were overpaying contractors for.
And it was a great segue because what it allowed us to do was to utilize the higher cost subcontractors in a territory, build it up to a certain level, and then switch over once the spreadsheet said it now makes more sense to do this in-house and hire our own people.
Correct.
And that doesn't mean that we've done 100% of conversion. There are areas in the U.S. where it's just not enough business density, and it makes sense to continue to use subcontractors. States like Wyoming, for example, very sparse, very few pieces of equipment compared to high dense areas, New York, California, Chicago, or Illinois.
On TikTok, Truck Guy 512 is joining us. He says, "Hello, I'm back again. What's your take on carbon catching technology in the transportation industry?"
I've not researched that, but I'm not in favor of any of these deviations, like even hydrogen. We have a great technology right now that has been heavily invested in, EV.
Right.
And it's not hybrid, it's not ICE engines, definitely, and it's not hydrogen. And the scale of economies come once the volume continues to build. Like we're seeing now with battery prices dropping. Why is that happening? Because of the heavy demand. So deviating into other technologies, although may end up with the same result, which is transitioning to cleaner energy, it's just not as cost effective.
My initial impression on the carbon catching technology, I've heard a little bit about it, but I'm not well versed. I'll take the Occam's razor approach, though. And the Occam's razor, of course, is the theory that the simplest solution is oftentimes the best solution when you're presented with a problem. Carbon catching technology is going to increase the complexity of vehicles that produce carbon emissions. And those vehicles that produce carbon emissions are already far more complex than battery electric vehicles.
Yep, and Lord knows we don't need more carbon. It's one of the most plentiful elements on Earth. So the nitrous oxide and the CO2 and stuff like that gets emitted from fuel burning vehicles. Carbon catching technology, not necessarily a bad thing, but I just feel like it's adding complexity to an already complex situation. And my take is go back to the drawing board and go to a different technology. And battery electric, in my opinion, is the best one that's out there, at least for now. Well, thank you, Truck Guy from TikTok. Instagram, Firmus Superior, or FLMES Superior, says, every Tesla shareholder should follow you guys.
Oh, that's quite a compliment. Thank you.
Yes, and we're not financial advisors, by the way, even though we own some of these stocks. Niels from Denmark is saying, thoughts about the new magnesium alloys and their potential to replace aluminum for casting. My first take on that, and I know very little about it, Neil, so let me preface that. We're trying to reduce the combustibility of these cars. And one of the reasons that the alternatives, the lithium ion, looks so attractive is because it reduces that combustibility. Now, for those of you familiar with magnesium, it's highly flammable once it gets going. It is light, maybe even lighter than aluminum. But I'm sure there will be some compelling production reasons for moving to this type of technology, and those will reveal themselves.
Well, and my understanding is magnesium is definitely in an alloy form. It's stronger than cast aluminum, which itself is some 2 to 3 times stronger than steel. But like you, I don't know enough about the magnesium to know whether or not it would have the ability to catch fire, especially given the kind of heat that gets generated when there is a lithium-ion battery fire.
Right. It might just contribute to that. All right. We talked about Mr. Bean earlier, and it's Rowan Atkinson, of course, is his real name. But he weighed in on, and there's a magazine article here, on electric vehicles. And he says, our honeymoon with electric vehicles is over. So for now, my advice is hang on to your old petrol motor, being from the UK, of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I didn't research it carefully, but my take on it was, okay, Mr. Bean, maybe you should remain in entertainment. Was that harsh, or am I on track there?
Well, my opinion,
Yeah.
you're on track. Okay. You're. I was very interested when I saw the article start hitting the EV press and started to do some research on it. And then I found out this article came out during the summertime. So, like a lot of the stuff that we end up finding and throwing up here, it's not yesterday's news or last week's news. It's a couple months old.
A bit regurgitated.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's not valuable and actually fairly entertaining. The article itself was pretty entertaining. But since there's been so much time for people to respond, I thought, well, maybe I should take, as my research, do some look at responses.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a piece from Michael Coren, who's the environmental editor of the Washington Post, and he appears to sum up a counter argument pretty well. Michael Coren said that when Rowan Atkinson was challenged about his arguments in a column by Inside Climate News, Atkinson told the publication in an email, and I quote, "Everyone cherry picks evidence to support his or her theses, and I'm sure that your scientists and experts will be doing the same." He added, "My primary aim is to encourage debate. The fact that you're having your discussion is great news to me."
Okay.
So Rowan Atkinson, he's talking about a honeymoon being over. He's an early adopter of electric vehicles, and he's more than anything expressing his frustration
Right.
at the lack of infrastructure, at the difficulties with service, and at the type of things that this new industry is encountering. And his conclusion of going back to petrol, or for us in the U.S., gasoline, I think is a wrong conclusion, but his arguments make a lot of sense. I also think that because Mr. Atkinson is part of everyone, that he probably cherry picked some of his data as well.
Probably. I have a picture we can throw up here, Jesse. It's called Battery. And a great picture to have supplied with this article from Mr. Bean would have been this particular picture. It would have reinforced some of his ideas in that article. There we go.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is one of the biggest concerns about these EVs. And but again, putting it in perspective, this is a very small minority of cases, and it is not the norm with electric vehicles.
You know, one of the bigger arguments that people seem to be putting against electric vehicles, and it was a recurring theme as I did this research, people want a car that doesn't pollute.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument Rowan Atkinson made and many others make are, well, the EVs are still polluting. They still lose the rubber off their tires, which causes pollution. They still there's the strip mining that goes on to get the lithium. There's still all the pollution that goes in to make the car. In fact, it's greater than what's in gasoline cars. True, it is a little bit greater than what goes in gasoline cars. The thing is, the only thing that doesn't pollute is something that can, with 100% efficiency, convert energy from one state to another, whether it's from heat or from battery storage or whatever to movement. And there's nothing that's 100% efficient. That's a perpetual motion machine.
AI has not yet given us that.
Exactly. And
I beg to differ. You ever hear of nuclear fusion?
Okay. I knew that was coming.
Okay. But for now, battery electric vehicles are probably our best alternative in the transportation sector to something that's 100% efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm putting my money, and that's where I want to go.
Number of comments here. Niels from Denmark is joining in again. He says, on the list of business-friendly countries, Sweden is number 4. Denmark is number 6. USA is number 59, behind many strange countries.
Too true, Niels. We complain about regulation, and we don't take that global view too much. The U.S. is one of the most highly regulated first world industrial countries on Earth.
Niels also adds, and this was in, he is answering the question about magnesium being used in casting, die casting, instead of aluminum. He says, no, the new alloys are not flammable. And that was a concern that I raised. The magnesium I'm familiar with will burn underwater. You throw it in a lake and it continues to burn at the bottom of that lake. Well, that is an interesting new twist. Now we're getting back into economies, scale of economies. Is it less expensive than aluminum? Are there other pitfalls in machining it? And it's possible, like you say, that this could be the new die casting metal.
Yeah, it could be. On YouTube, Peter Garten says, hello from Sweden.
Oh, welcome. Thanks. We're talking a lot about your country today, Peter, so it's appropriate that you're joining us.
If you have a view on labor and the labor unions in Sweden, we'd love to hear your views as well.
Mm-hmm. YouTube, Ramon Hurt says, when it comes to towing with an EV, range is a big issue. What do you guys think about having trailers with built-in motors and battery packs that can be controlled by the vehicle towing it? It's brilliant, actually, because the signaling systems in a trailer are controlled by the towing vehicle already.
Yes.
So there's some electricity floating around. Now, you put in-wheel motors into a trailer, and it could help in two ways. One is propulsion. The other one is regenerative braking.
In fact, what you're just talking about is out there. Mm-hmm. There's an electric trailer, and Jesse or Cass, you're going to have to help me with the name, that's being developed. It has about 110 kilowatt battery pack, 2 motors in wheels, and its whole idea is that if you put the trailer into range mode, it will help propel the vehicle, effectively eliminating the drop in range.
You're talking about the light ship, the actually like
yes, thank you, Jesse.
It's like a mobile home trailer thing.
It's like an RV mobile home trailer, and it does all these things that we're talking about. It can there's about a 3 kilowatt or so solar array on the trailer. Mm-hmm. That's enough to mostly charge the battery over the course of about a weekend. Mm-hmm. The battery can then do vehicle-to-vehicle charging. Yeah. So your trailer gets charged, and as a result of your trailer getting charged, your vehicle gets charged.
Amazing. And think about the surface area available on campers for solar cells. You know?
Oh, yeah. It's a full 8 feet wide by some 30 feet long, and
you got to cover it up with something anyway, so you might as well make it photovoltaic.
So it's a wonderful idea, and there are people actually working on it.
Instagram, FNE_mobile. He says, good luck for the future. Best Tesla working team. The Tesla Roadster release, we'll be talking about that at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
And there's some definite advantages to what took place. Facebook, Long Win says, hello. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
YouTube, David Strandkar says, hi from Slovenia. Thank you for joining us.
So glad to have people here. Mm-hmm. Niels on YouTube says that I agree that everyone who drives less than 8,000 to 10,000 miles a year should stick with the gas car, because that tends to cause the least emissions. If you're over 10,000 miles a year, get EVs.
Interesting. Okay. YouTube, Krisha says, Sweden here. It has been ruled that the plates do not have to be delivered until an actual judgment of the situation is finished, and our unions are a national pride. So it looks like that 7-day moratorium when fines start may have been rescinded. I'm sure that this is an evolving story that will continue to
I'm sure it
grow.
is. I'm sure it is. So we look forward to getting the comments on those. On Facebook, Scott Trillo says, still a rich man toy.
Okay. TikTok, Truck Guy 512 says, I disagree that EV is a solution, perhaps in the passenger car market, but in the truck work, not an option with the current technology or ideas.
In the truck world, the Tesla Semi has been proving out the concept pretty effectively. There's a long ways to go. There are some other very unique situations with the trucking world that I'm sure have not been fully addressed. And and they're behind the passenger automotive world. But I still think I happen to disagree. I think it could be a viable option.
Mm-hmm. Or it will evolve into what is a more viable option than current diesel and gasoline trucks. Niels is weighing in again from Denmark. He says magnesium is much easier to cast, 30% lighter, and I think 30% more expensive. Not sure on that number. Casting speed would go way up, and getting costs down can be done by perfecting extraction from seawater.
Ah, okay.
Great ideas. Instagram, Zabafani, hi, how can I speak to you in this live? Well, you can email anyone that wants to join our podcast, by the way, and wants a spot. You can email EV for electric vehicle at gruber.com, gruber.com. And we will see if there is an interest in us with the type of content that you would express. And we could put you on one of our podcasts.
One Hungry Clippo on Instagram also responds back to Zebon Fani and says, if you have a question, you can just ask it.
Correct. Just like you did, yes. Instagram, I am Grand Harva says, what about fuel cell? Jesse, what are your thoughts on fuel cell? We're definitely a fusion or pro-fusion, but...
I don't really know a whole lot about the fuel cell. Is something I think we want to stay away from. I think that's hydrogen fuel cells is what they're referring to.
Complexity again, yes.
Yeah, that's
plumbing, things we're trying to get away from.
Yeah, there's no infrastructure for it, and I say we put our money into things like EV rather than fuel cells.
I find the hydrogen fuel cell is a very intriguing option. Especially with the recent discoveries of what's called white hydrogen, which is hydrogen that's being generated naturally in the Earth's crust and can potentially be mined and will regenerate itself. Additional hydrogen gas or compressed hydrogen will regenerate itself. So to me, it's intriguing, but the delivery structure, getting hydrogen into some sort of a fuel cell that then converts it into electricity, I feel like you're going to end up with something that is as complex or more complex than EVs.
Mm-hmm. And aren't you still using a lithium battery with it too?
You can have a hydrogen fuel cell car that runs just on the hydrogen fuel cell and not on any other kind of battery technology.
Yeah, that would be redundant, it seems. Facebook, Cesar Acevedo. Hello from Venezuela. You guys are the best sharing all this information.
Thank you.
You too. Peter Garten says, regarding the plates for Teslas, now we're talking about Sweden again, and the block for Tesla owners able to get their license plates. Regarding the plates for Teslas, they can't be delivered, but Tesla can pick them up from the manufacturer.
That's part of what the lawsuit was against the Department of Transportation. So I'm glad to see that much has been settled, and I'm sure that Tesla will be going and picking up plates and then either delivering them or notifying the new owners that they can get their plates.
And then David Strandcar says on YouTube, electric cars are too expensive. Yeah, they're coming down in price, but compared to an ICE car, we haven't reached that tipping point yet quite.
No, we haven't quite yet. I'm hoping that we can get to that $25,000 car soon.
So Elon Musk announced earlier this month that Tesla's full self-driving FSD version 12 would be released in 2 weeks. The unusual time frame reference Musk is famous for was met with skepticism. However, it seems that Tesla's right on track with this rollout. According to this article, they say we have learned through a trusted source that FSD version 12 has started rolling out internally with Tesla Update 2023.38.10. And they are rolling this out to Tesla employees that are getting a chance to drive this. Now, FSD 12 is the update that is expected to remove beta from the title. And the initial rollout to employees appears more limited in scale than previous updates. Considering the magnitude of changes in this version, it makes sense to start slow, they say. They also mention that the timing of this internal release is close to 2 major Tesla events currently, We've got the Cybertruck delivery event, which is just a few days away now, November
Yeah.
30th, right?
Yeah.
And many eyes will be on the company during the event, allowing Tesla to possibly show the world its latest breakthrough. Alternatively, the highly anticipated holiday update, often regarded as the best Tesla update of the year, is expected to be released by Santa Musk in the coming weeks, potentially featuring version 12 as a significant addition. So what they say about this FSD version is that it will test the some new developments, which is the latest Tesla features such as predictive charger availability, faster hazard lights after a crash, and many other features, as they say. But the main thing that is unique about this version 12 is a significant change in eliminating over 300,000 lines of code previously governing FSD functions that control the vehicle. And this is related to, how do I interpret a stop sign? How many sides does it have? What do I do with two-lane, markings in the middle of the road if they're yellow? Instead of that, what they're now replacing this kind of coding with is reliance on neural networks. So the dependency on hard-coded program is going away. And to control, it will be neural networks now that will control steering, acceleration, and braking for the first time. And we had talked about this in previous podcasts, is that Tesla is in a unique position collecting all of this driving data for hundreds of thousands of cars, EVs,
Yeah.
and then being able to feed that into AI to interpret that. And taking then the best driving examples and feeding that into this capability for full self-driving, which it seems at this point seems to be more efficient than trying to code everything and anticipate every variable that it might run across.
I find that it's fascinating. In theory, I realize this probably wouldn't be the case because of what you just said. Tesla's going to take the best of the best. They're gonna human vet the driving scenarios, and then they're going to feed the ones that meet certain standards into AI. But what, speculating a little bit, what if, okay, you drive city to get to and from home. You're almost all city driving when you're driving. I drive freeway to get home. Gruber is not far from one of the local freeways, and I live north to south, just about across towns. I'm sure that our driving styles are different as a result. And it would be fun, maybe, if full self-driving were capable of figuring out our driving styles, replicating those styles, and then we switch cars, and then what would happen? I mean, both of us would be thinking, what are you doing, silly car?
Of course, that's assuming that the data is being retrieved and fed and stored in the vehicles rather than in the broader AI or AGI base in this case.
Right. And in fact, I can't say for you, but I'm gonna guess that the vast majority of my driving habits would not sit in that 1 out of 10 that would make it into AI.
Yeah. Okay. So they label this as baby AGI, artificial general intelligence. The system is designed to perceive and understand the complexities of the real world. The philosophical and technological shift in AI-driven autonomy was vividly showcased, they say, in the live streamed drive by Elon Musk through Palo Alto. A couple of months ago, I think it was, where a Model S demonstrated, and he had his hands off the wheel the entire time, it demonstrated a smooth and almost flawless navigation through various real-world scenarios, including construction zones, roundabouts, and traffic. That was 3 months ago, they say. And imagine how much the system has learned in 3 months since then. If you recall, there were a few indications that this version of full self-driving that was used 3 months ago was struggling a bit, and one of them was they got to an intersection, a four-way stop sign intersection, and it was unclear to AGI who was to go next, probably anticipating human error. The machines would have a flawless execution because within microseconds, they would know who got there first and whose turn it is next.
Yeah, and if the cars are communicating with each other, why do you even have four-way stops at that point?
Exactly. All traffic signals are no longer necessary once the machines take over.
Yeah, traffic signals, four-way stops. If you're a human being and you see this car coming at you and they're 15 feet and they're not slowing down, you'd think, oh my gosh. But you go through and 0.02 of a second later, they're going through.
The other neat part is once machines take over driving totally, speed limits are unnecessary.
That's right.
They will adjust to the optimum speed.
That's right.
And that may be lightning fast, even through intersections. You'll see them just whizzing by each other,
Yeah. And if there's heavy traffic, they'll adjust their speed downward to make sure to maximize the appropriate level of traffic for the road that they're traveling on.
Yeah. A lot of comments here. YouTube, Hinda Finga says, a FC car without buffer battery has either no power or a very large fuel cell.
Well, you're for a fuel cell car, you're exposing our ignorance here. That makes some sense, and I'll take a look further into fuel cell cars and how they work.
Mm-hmm. Instagram, Zaba Fani says, in Iran, we are so into EVs, so it would be interesting to talk about it in a live program. Okay, so that would be the basis then of you joining our podcast. Send us that email and we'll see what we can set up.
Yeah, that would be really fascinating. Facebook, Aminul Haq, I saw to Bangladesh, he says.
Ah, okay.
So he's in Bangladesh. And then Niels on YouTube says, just looked up magnesium content. It's 1.3 pro mil in seawater. That means it's 1.3 grams of magnesium per liter of seawater.
How did you know that? That's pretty cool.
Google AI.
Oh, he's Google. All right. I was impressed for a second. It was Google. Never mind.
Yeah, it's not me, unfortunately. Between 3 and 20 pro mil in algae. It's the second most common cation, which I think is an element, after sodium.
Sodium. Cool.
Now, that's interesting. I did not know that, Niels.
All right. YouTube, SM, why are both of you wearing these ridiculous sunglasses indoors? Really? Question mark, question mark. We are going to have a reveal one of these days that will explain to everybody why we're wearing these. And I think that you'll probably soften your position once we have that reveal. But in the meantime, we're going to ride the intrigue, the mystique, the mystery until it dies, and then we'll do that video.
Absolutely. And we're going to tell you a little bit about our sunglass cases to hold sunglasses, Richard.
I was about to say, and in the meantime, in between this amazing tension with the sunglasses and the mystery, and when it's revealed, you can slightly satisfy your curiosity by ordering one of these sunglass case holders. They are $79.99 unless you use code Richard or Aaron. You'll get 10% off.
One of the things I like about these holders is that because they're a real full grain leather, they don't scratch.
Ah, okay. All right. And they're soft and buttery and
they don't scratch. And that's one of the things I use this one regularly for my sunglasses in here. And it's used now for a few months, and it's amazing how they don't scratch.
Another thing is they are also magnetic.
Yes. And for
That's
those
right.
of you that want that, it's on our e-store. Now, YouTube EV Fan answers YouTube SM regarding why are we wearing these sunglasses? He says, because people like you will comment about it and give them engagement.
That's right.
Thumbs up. YouTube Banana Man, he speculates that we have laser eyes. Now remember, we're heavily into artificial intelligence. The picture behind us, by the way, we usually talk about our backdrop. That was generated now by ChatGPT-4. We used to use Midjourney. It was our image generating software. And we're now beginning to prefer ChatGPT-4. It does brighter renditions. It actually is able to type out words that make sense. In this case, I asked for a futuristic news studio with some robots standing by, and it did not disappoint.
And those look remarkably like the Tesla robots, too.
Yeah. YouTube Niels says, regarding AI, how can they train NN neural networks to know when turns at red lights are allowed? It varies from state to state. Or interpreting a speed limit sign. Some countries want the speed before the sign, at the sign. Some FSD codes might be indispensable or might be dispensable, but I can't see how a neural network will handle everything. There has to be a rigid rule skeleton within which the neural network can play. If NC, there will be bizarre crashes everywhere.
That is, if not, it is not displaying properly on the screen.
Oh, if not, there will be bizarre crashes forever. Good questions, Nils. Nils. I did that again. I haven't done that in weeks, have I?
Niels.
You just did it twice in a row.
I did twice in a row.
And Pete,
all right, Jesse counts.
And for Niels out there, the FSD is still going to have the rules of every state. It's still going to have all of the knowledge in there programmed into it. It's just not going to be hard coded as rules. It's going to be able to choose whether or not to abide by those rules.
Right. And, of course, something else. In Arizona, at least, speed limits are more of a suggestion. They've turned that way after COVID and after the law enforcement officers began to stay in their precincts.
Yeah.
So I don't know how neural network programming will respond to the fact that the majority of people drive at least 10 to 15% faster than posted speed limits. And drive very safely, actually. You're probably a danger in Arizona if you're driving the speed limit.
If you're driving the speed limit, yeah, it will match traffic. It's not going to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are other areas of the country that I really believe speed limit signs are for target practice.
Cool. Yes. All right. We've
Hey
got
guys, we have 4 minutes.
We got a news item here. A quick one. BYD, Chinese EV manufacturer, said that it has rolled out its sixth millionth NEV off the assembly line in Chengdu, China, which is in the Henan province. NEV, by the way, is a Chinese version of BEV, battery electric vehicle. It stands for new electric vehicle, and it's a term used by the Chinese government to refer to vehicles that attract public subsidies. In the United States, it can be confusing because we have NEVs that also stand for neighborhood electric vehicles, which are limited in speed to about 25 miles per hour. They're just, basically smaller vehicles. So it looks like we're coming to a close here. Those of you that want to continue to be entertained by us, at 11 o'clock in just a few minutes, we're going to switch over to the Tesla Roadster podcast, which is going to be focused on this new release by Elon Musk, where he released all of or open sourced the proprietary Tesla Roadster design information, from schematics to software to test procedures to tooling, how it was built.
Yeah, user manuals. It's going to be one of the most exciting discussions that we've had on Tesla Roadsters in some time.
Or ever, for that matter.
Yeah, so really looking forward to that. I encourage you guys to hang out and as we go to that transition and go to the Tesla Roadster. We have just a couple of comments here, both from Niels. One says, if the neural network can break traffic rules when it prefers, how could it ever be approved?
The same way a human driver that can break rules whenever they want to gets approved. They take a test and they get approved. Real quick, we had Van Goat show up on TikTok. He's saying, good morning, team. Van Goat, we will be ending this stream and going live for our Roadster show here in just a minute.
Great. Thank you, Jesse.
And one final plug. Those of you that see our YouTube channel, Gruber Motor Company, we've got a bunch of rants out there now. And what we're trying is short, brief things that irritate. They may irritate you as well. So if you want something humorous, you can go out there and check out those rants. And they're called Pete's Rants. There's a topic on each one of the thumbnails. And if you like it,
there's some good ones out there. And then Niels, I think he has a message for Jesse here. Happy Fusion Dreams. Won't work.
How dare you, Niels?
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week or later in the Roadster podcast in a few minutes.
Take care.